Vanessa Neumann. She's coming up. She knows a little bit about Venezuela. She's from there. She grew up there. She worked there. She lived there. Her family's from there. And she's very dialed in. She's all over South America.
Oh, my gosh.
She is become a regular now in the John Frederick Show because she's that good.
Wow. She's
our expert in South America, just like we got our guy in the Middle East, Eddie Iranian. And she's very knowledgeable, very articulate, and pulls no punches. Mm-hmm. No punches.
Well, that's a requirement to be on the John Frederick Show.
I know.
You cannot pull punches.
What's the female
No
version?
gibberish, no nonsense.
And no pulling punches.
No punch pulling.
What's the mother of Godzilla?
I don't know. Mothra? I don't know.
Mothra.
I don't know.
Was he call her the Mothra of the truth?
Mama Godzilla?
Mama Godzilla of the truth?
Yeah, that's right.
Godzilla-ress. She's the Godzilla-ress of the truth. Is there a female Godzilla? There's got to be, right?
There's got to be.
He's got to have a mother.
Right, exactly.
He's got a mate.
Right.
So there's got to be a Godzilla-ress. I think it's Mothra, though. The Mothra of the truth. Remember Godzilla versus Mothra?
Oh, yeah. That was a great one.
The Mothra almost won. That was like the giant moth, right?
Right.
Where'd they come up with this stuff in Japan?
I don't know. They're wacky
back in
over
the
there.
day. We're going to get to Venezuela, though. The president of Asymmetrica, Vanessa Neumann, with us. Vanessa, the Godzilla-ress of the truth. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. I feel very honored to be on and very honored to be introduced like that. Thank you so much. It's great to be on with you again.
I kind of like that nickname for her, Curtis. What do you think?
That's very
Godzilla-ress of the
Godzilla-ress. Well, I'll have to find. Yeah, I'm sure there's some warrior queen. I mean, Boudica was she fought the Romans. She was a Celtic. She was an Irish queen, but she was a redhead. I'm not a redhead.
What was her name?
Boudica.
Boudica.
B-O-U.
Boudica.
Yeah, she was.
Boudica.
Yeah, the Romans were kind of feared her. And their soldiers. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, we've got a mess going in Venezuela. And,
what is going on?
So over the weekend, they attempted to assassinate the president by drone at a public event. So he was rather foolishly trying to have this parade to celebrate, the glory of 81 years of his National Guards that are deeply involved in repression of protesters, and it all looked quite Stalinist. It all looked a little bit reminiscent of North Korea or something. And along comes a couple of drones, one that blew up, and the question was, and there was a sort of this video, all of these lined up military guys, sort of as I said, sort of lined up sort of North Korea style, and they were running like ants. So it sort of triggered a lot of, well, I guess he's not that protected. But what happened was, they arrested a bunch of kids who apparently were sort of hired to operate these small commercial drones, but they had put C4 explosive on them to try and get it close to where the president was with all his cabinet, on the podium. And because the president's security forces had the drone jamming technology, the drone couldn't get close enough and blew up outside of range, but it's powerful outside of range of the president. But it was still so powerful that it injured 7 soldiers. So the roundup began, and last night they were arresting a bunch of more people, pinning it on some opposition leaders. I don't think it's opposition leaders. I think it's from within his own ranks. A few of us think that. So it's really looking very Stalinist. I mean, this is like Soviet Russia or something. It's Soviet or Berlin under the Stasi. It's really hardcore. And they were arresting people last night that I know, and had nothing to do with it. But it becomes an excuse for them to just crack down and make a show. Because the one thing you can't say is, my own guys want me dead, right? He's got to pin it on America. So the first thing he did was pin it on the U.S. So the U.S. and Colombia, which is a friend of the U.S., are trying to kill me. My people love me. They defended me. We're like, no, they didn't. They ran
away.
They ran like roaches. I mean look at the video.
When you turn on the light. Yeah, we saw that on the video. I saw it the other day before you came on. And when the drones blew up, his security apparatus was running away, which I thought was kind of stunning. I mean, I certainly, if I was him, wouldn't be too confident that I'm going to be protected. But so he has this military parade. They try to blow him up with drones. They get teenagers to operate them because I guess they couldn't figure it out, right? So they get teenagers to operate them.
Well, because I guess, unfortunately, this is very, very cruel, but it's very real. First of all, you needed someone who can be elsewhere, right? I mean, you're not going to be operating the drone while you're on the stage, too, or while you're at the military parade, right? If it is an inside job, which we believe it is. You have to get some kids who are like somewhere in the audience or in a nearby building, right? And there's an operational angle. But also the other angle is, when they get caught, which they probably will, and they did, they get sacrificed, and the real people behind it can still kind of stay hidden and have another round at this. The problem is it sort of triggers violence, repression, which then triggers more anger. So I think what we're starting to see is the really brutal death spiral of the regime, and this is really brutal and hard, and it's going to be bloody.
All right, so Vanessa, so we got kind of the first pass here at some sort of a coup, an assassination. Obviously, if it was successful and the president had been assassinated, there's a power vacuum, then somebody steps in, or there's a military conflict or a civil strife. You're very close to the situation. As you said, people got arrested over this drone falsely. So where do they go from here? I mean, where does the president go? Where does the country go?
I don't know. I mean, if the president was smart, which he isn't, which is why the country's like in collapse, and 1,000,000% inflation is what's predicted by the end of the year. We had 84,000% inflation just in the last month. He's obviously just run what should have been the world's wealthiest country, biggest oil supplies in the country, reserves in the world, rather, which should have been, he's run it into the ground. So we know he's not smart. If he was smart, he would resign, get on a plane, and leave. I mean, Venezuela had a military dictatorship in 1958 that got overthrown. It was also very brutal. And then the people started protesting, and his own military advisor said, time to go. This is going to get ugly. You got to get on a plane and, fly, I think I said before on your show, fly to Paris, where all good dictators go to retire.
Right.
I think they might be trying to encourage him to do that, to say, time's up, go. And if he doesn't go, this will escalate. I think we're going to see more and more attempts, because especially now that you've seen them run, you've exposed the weaknesses. And if you think that, and just to confirm what I'm saying, that it's an inside job, is none of his defenders, none of his allies came out and said, this is a terrible thing. We stand with the president. We give him our, unwavering support. He gave a speech a few hours later with a few generals sort of seated around a table in the presidential palace, sort of nodding their heads. And no one said, I stand with you, my Señor Presidente, or anything. They were conspicuously quiet. So this is going to unravel like a Soviet era spy thriller, like a John le Carré movie. So we're going to see.
17 minutes.
So I think, unfortunately, we're going to see more violence. I think we're going to see more bombings. Yeah, I think you'll see more of that. It's going to get ugly. And then the people who will have to step in will have to be military. And then how we dislodge them and get back to democracy will be another question.
So there's no indication this president is going to take your suggestion and resign. And there's also a fleeting indication that he's got military behind him. Like you said, when he made the speech, the military generals were in the back nodding, but nobody said anything, and nobody came out and made a public statement that, the military is behind the regime. Nothing. So you almost got the impression that it was just odd to me. In this sort of a dictatorship, to have those generals there when not one of them really came to the forefront and made a statement in support of the administration or the regime or whatever you want to phrase it as, the dictatorship. Not one of them said a word. And so shouldn't that give the people of Venezuela pause?
So it does and it doesn't. So here's the problem. Here's what's happened with Venezuelans. I was there last May, and it was during the protests that were sort of globally broadcast. They had millions of people in the streets, and they're throwing tear gas, and I was there during that. And now this is a completely different country because this is sort of driven off a cliff. It's just 10 times more horrible than it was. And I came back and somebody said, "What'd you think?" I said, "The whole country has like Stockholm syndrome. It's like they can't, it's like when someone's been kidnapped or been in an abusive relationship for so long, they don't even know how to stand up for themselves. They don't know they can't play the cards that they might have to their advantage." And so what has happened is that so many people in Venezuela they think that the regime is so all-powerful psychologically, right? They think it's so all-powerful because there's so much repression and they think that they don't believe anything it says, that they think that this is a show. So even a lot of people say, "I can't really believe that somebody really fought to get him out, that somebody's really doing this." I think it's just a show by the government to make an excuse for further repression. But listen, if it were a show, you would have shown like your military super strong. If you want to accept that and you say that he did it and it's fake, then you would show your military standing firm and strong and shooting down the drone. You wouldn't show them running like a bunch of cowards, right?
Exactly. That's my point. Exactly. They would have done the exact opposite. They would have shot the drone down. They would have coalesced on stage around the president. They would have all turned the other way with guns pointed. And, that's what you would have seen in a lot of these other type of dictatorships where, you even saw that with Saddam Hussein's Revolutionary Guard, right? As right. bad as they were, when anything happened with Saddam Hussein, they were all there gathered with him, and the generals would stand up and make speeches. So you didn't have that here. So it leads you to believe that you have to question what hold he has on the military, how powerful they even are, and what could be, your concept that this was an inside job, and just looking at the whole thing, I don't think that's out of the question at all.
Yeah.
Vanessa,
no, I think so. We have to watch and see how this goes. Some people last night were saying, well, the fact that they started just sort of rounding up all of these opposition people last night that have long been opposition leaders. The one person who was taken last night is a congressman who's 29 years old. He was a student leader at a school, at a university that used to be very leftist. It used to be very socialist.
Right.
And then they sort of saw the light and realized this was a really bad idea, that these guys are a bunch of dictators. And that became sort of the heart of the student movement.
Right.
They flipped from socialists to right wingers, and they took him last night. So some people said, well, that's proof that he staged it. I said, no, I don't think so. I think they're just going to use any excuse.
Sure.
To pin it on anybody else. Get rid of your opposition, even if you're not sure that they're the ones responsible. You just kind of take the opportunity, and I think that's what's going on.
Well, that's what dictatorial regimes do. If you look at what Erdogan did in Turkey, same thing, right? When there was a potential coup on him, and it was potentially led by one of the clerics that are in the U.S. They arrested thousands of people, right? The Erdogan government took the opportunity of the potential coup they had to round up and put in jail all of their opposition, whether they had anything to do with it or not. But it was a convenient way for them to do that. And so I think you're going to see the same thing here in Venezuela. We're with Vanessa Neumann. Vanessa is the president of Asymmetrica. She is our resident expert in South America. She's from Venezuela and Caracas. Vanessa, let me just ask you this. Where's the U.S. in this thing?
Well, we do have one bit of good news that happened yesterday, which is that we have yesterday, Ivan Duque, who's the new president of Colombia, got sworn in. Mm-hmm. And he's great. He's tough. He's conservative. He's super smart, American educated. It's really good news for the U.S. and for Washington, D.C. It's good news for the U.S. and the region. This is going to be a great friend of conservatism, a great friend of trade, law and order. He's not going to give safe haven to a lot of those left-wing Marxist terrorist groups that got a really sweet peace deal last year signed in Havana. Right. This guy's a hawk on all that. And he's going to be a real anchor in the region for the U.S. And we in Venezuela, those of us who are opposed to the dictatorship in Venezuela, which is most of the country at this point, are thrilled to have this guy next door. So the U.S., I think, is going to sort of take a back seat. And in a way, you can argue that this is going to unravel of its own accord. So they don't really need to do very much if this is coming internally. And if the U.S. steps in because if it becomes a bloody massacre, and you have waves of people fleeing, which you already have. We already have a couple of million Venezuelans have left throughout the region and fled throughout the region. If that becomes really brutal, then the U.S. would work with its partners like Colombia and Brazil, who are neighboring countries, and support something like that. I don't think the U.S. has the stomach to intervene militarily. Mm-hmm. I think Latin Americans don't have the stomach to see U.S. troops on the ground. And I don't think it's even necessary at this point. Right. Unfortunately, if it gets really bad, then I think they will have to step in with the regional proxies, including Colombia, as of yesterday.
Right. So basically what you're saying the U.S. should do is work through its proxy Colombia. Anything they do should be covert, not overt, because any direct involvement that can be tied back to the U.S. is only going to further advance the agenda of your current president that's very anti-U.S. and he's going to stir up the same sort of leftist opposition again. Right. So any role that we play in there is just going to backfire.
That's why the first thing he said was, I'm going to blame it on people, on Colombia and American and people in Miami, people who are in the U.S., specifically Miami, because you have so many opposition in Miami. Right. And Washington. And it was so bad that John Bolton came out and he said, he screams bloody murder, basically. And then John Bolton had to come out and state, we had no role in this. Right. And I think it's true. They don't need to have a role in it. It's happening of its own accord.
And even that, Vanessa Neumann, in and of itself, even the fact that National Security Director John Bolton felt it necessary to make a statement disavowing any involvement in it. Normally, the U.S. position on any of these things is they don't confirm or deny anything, right? Because we don't confirm or deny, which is you don't know. But they went so far as to make a pretty bold public statement and saying we had nothing to do with this whatsoever. Rather than say nothing.
It was so bad they had to say something.
Right. It was so botched they had to say something. I guess it was so botched they didn't want to be associated with it, nor did they want to further incite the president of Venezuela's backers right now. But look, something has got to happen. Inflation. There is no economy there. You can't buy anything. You have to take a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a box of chiclets. The thing is a disaster. Right. They're going to have to do something quickly. What it is, I don't know.
This really just can't hold much longer because with the inflation rate, even the soldiers are going hungry, Right. They're in charge of the food distribution. It's just so, and you can't get gasoline for your car, so the things are so out of whack that, for instance, they now smuggle gasoline over the border, which is why you can't get it there because the price is so cheap in Venezuela that one carton of eggs is the same price as an entire tanker full of gasoline, like that you see on the highway. That tanker full is the same price as eggs. So what you do is, when you want money, you drive that tanker full over the border to another country and sell it, and you make, $3.5 million.
Right, and then you buy the goods in Colombia, whatever that you need, and then you try to smuggle them back in, and it's a tough way to live.
It's apocalyptic.
It is a tough way to live. Vanessa Neumann, thanks for joining us. We're out of time. I really appreciate you, Vanessa, and your great insight here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, president of Asymmetrica. Vanessa, thank you for that great analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure, John. Thanks.